Mike Sandler alongside Harper LaBelle. And Harper, today, we've got a little bit of a special show today. Typically, we talk business, but today, a little bit more casual, a lot more fun because we're sports guys. Folks may remember us from 92.9 having some sports banter on that station for years. We've gone back. We've turned the clock back because we've got a special guest today.
Yeah, what was the Mike Myers character where he sat and it was called Coffee Talk? Remember that? And today it's going to be a little
Saturday Night
different.
Live
We're going to
skit.
have a hockey talk today.
Hockey talk. It is our pleasure and my pleasure to be joined by the great Dan Bouchard. Now, if you're an old-time hockey fan in Atlanta, you know Dan Bouchard. He was the starting goaltender for every single year the Atlanta Flames were here from 1972 to 1980. Dan, welcome to the Business RadioX studio.
My joy, my joy.
So this has been something that Harper and I have been talking about for a long time. Because hockey's back in the news lately with Atlanta, possibly all the talk about getting maybe a future NHL franchise. And we'll talk about that later in the show. But let's talk a little bit about your career coming up. I didn't know this until I met you a couple of weeks ago at a Cat Rangers golf tournament. You were drafted by the old Boston Bruins.
Exactly.
The big bad Bruins back in 1970?
69.
So that was, I grew up in the Boston area, big Bobby Orr fan and so forth. So you were there. I remember Jerry Cheevers, Eddie Johnston were the goalies. I remember Gilles Gilbert. I could just rattle off names for years.
Yeah.
But you came up with the Boston Bruins. How did you end up with the Atlanta Flames?
Well, I was playing with the Bruins farm system and played in Hershey my first year. My second year, I ended up playing with the Bruins and the Braves. Well, we had the Braves and the Bruins in the same building. We were in the American League, Bruins. And, hockey was so big in Boston, they're selling both 1 o'clock game and 7:30 game. They were sold out, so they had a lot of doubleheader for hockey in those days. And I ended up with the Bruins during the Stanley Cup playoff. I was the third goalie. The year before was a guy called John Adams, or 2 years before was a guy called John Adams, who was the third goalie, but he ended up getting traded. So. And then the World Hockey came along, and then the NHL had a 2-year, two more teams expansion, Atlanta and the New York Islanders.
Yeah, because the original six added six more teams. What, in 1967 was it, Harper, including your LA Kings?
Yeah,
Kings.
And then the WHA came in, started grabbing some markets, and so the NHL expanded a little quicker than they wanted to. Added the Islanders and the Flames in 72.
Yeah, well, when the Flames and the Islanders came in the league, that's when the World Hockey came on at the same time.
Okay. And so you got drafted by the Atlanta Flames.
I got drafted by the Atlanta Flames.
Here's a kid growing up in Quebec, that area, and now you're going to the deep south. Did you know anything about Georgia, anything about Atlanta?
No, I did not know. The only thing I remember about Atlanta was I used to watch, TV, sports on TV, and there was the advertising for the Equitable. The guy playing bowling and kicking the thing. There was the Equitable, and it was the Atlanta city right behind it. That's the only thing. And so, anyway, I got drafted, and then I came to Atlanta. The first time I came to Atlanta was July 6th. And right after July 4th, we ended up going to the baseball game, the Braves, and there was nobody there. It was easy to get tickets, and we went to watch. But I came to the city, and that was kind of amazing. I fell in love with the city. Atlanta, right across from Piedmont Hospital, there was a place where it shows the population. And I always remember it says 497,000 people. It was just a country town.
Yeah.
And there was nothing, the 75 ended up at Delk Road, and that was it.
Did you speak much English back then?
Oh, yeah, I spoke English. I was fluent in English. I was brought up in Montreal, and mostly all the kids that played hockey in Montreal learned both languages. As a matter of fact, my last year, I did my high school. I went to high school in London, Ontario. That was my pretext to jump league. And then ended up going to learn all the languages and the English and French together. I did all the different subjects, biology, you name it, so I could be fluent. And then I got I waited for the scholarships, and I got scholarship at great places like Harvard and all that, and Boston College, and Michigan Tech, and but
But hockey was your love.
yeah, hockey was my love. So I did not know. So I decided when I turned pro, I would sign with the Bruins. And I like Boston. The first time I went to Harvard Yard, well, that was kind of, I did not know what Harvard was. But I remember when I got the letters with the wings, on each side of you know, the,
The logo.
the logo and all that. Everybody's saying, "What is this thing?" And our coach was Beb Gwidlin, the guy ended up coaching the Braves. He was our coach in London. He says, Bush, he can go to Harvard if he wants. And then he's got MIT. And he said, well, I don't know. I did not know none of those schools. I knew Boston College. I knew Michigan Tech because Tony Esposito, but that was it. I did not know how big college hockey was. So, but anyway, I had already graduated, college. I was 20 years old. So
Yeah.
when I went into pro, to me, it was secondary. So I could do business later on.
We have stories about hundreds of different guys that you played with. Bobby Orr being one of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Didn't he call you? He had a nickname for you. Didn't he call you Plant? Tell
he
us a
called
story
me-
about that.
Bobby Orr, when I first went to Boston, I had brand new equipment, and I have those steel balls like they play in French, a French game called pétanque, where they use the steel balls to roll. It's like bocce, similar to bocce.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to take those steel balls, put it in my gloves, steam the glove, and put the balls in there, and then it would make the
To help
glove
form the leather, right?
to form the leather.
To break in the glove and
break in
your
the glove.
blockers.
So in those days, you tried to, you had to do it quick because the equipment was not broken in as they get it all prepared now.
Yeah.
So anyway, the trainer was Forstall, was the trainer, John Forstall, for the trainers for the Braves, for the Bruins, and he went to grab the glove, and the ball fell on his toe. And
hazards of the job.
And I used to tell him, be careful, just be careful when you go around my equipment. I got some heavy balls up there and all that. And Bobby Orr was standing there when I was telling him, and he was just bitching. Don't worry, I've been around this thing. What, you think I'm a fool or something? And I said, you got to be careful. If one of those balls fall on you, if it hits you on the head or something, it could hurt you. And naturally it happened. So I kind of called it. So Jacques, Bobby Orr turns around and says, where'd you learn that? Oh, I saw Jacques Plante when he was with St. Louis Blues in London my last year junior. He used to put the steel ball in there, let him sit after he had practice because the sweat and all that, it helps break the glove. So he started to call me Jacques. Hey, Jacques, and all that. So that was a funny part.
No, it's Dan.
No.
It's Dan. No, for Bobby Orr, it's Jacques. It's your special name.
Well, they're probably thinking these crazy goaltenders. How did you become a goaltender? What led you to that position?
You know what? It was funny. I remember that
because all goalies are kind of crazy.
I remember because it was. Well, I'll tell you why I've become a crazy. Now you'll really know I'm crazy. When we were, I was 7 years old. I was playing minor league hockey. For a Christian organization, all the Roman Catholics parish around the city of Ville La Salle.
You're playing youth hockey.
Yeah, we're playing youth hockey,
okay.
And we had each parish had their teams, and my coach was Jacques Lemaire's father.
Wow.
Emile, and he coached me my first year, and I always remember I was playing defense, and one day we go to play this place and it's called Riverside, and it was a bad deal that day because you had the wind in your face and the sun in your face for 2 periods. So the guy that was our regular goalie, he decided he's not dressing. So Mr. Lemaire walks in and he says, Michel, you're not even dressed, And I already had one pad on. He says, who's going to play goal? And I put my left leg up. I had the pad on. I said, I'm going to dress. So I dress. We won the game. We won the game 1-0. So he told me, he said, "You're pretty good. You like to play goal?" And I says, "Yeah." I says, "Well, it's kind of cold, though." I says, "There's a lot of things I didn't think over very well." But I says, I says,
Because you're not moving around.
You're
as
not
much.
skating
You're
around as
yeah.
much, yeah.
Yeah.
so, but no, when you got the ice with the sun flashing on the ice, trying to see that puck's kind of, we had no glare underneath our eyes in those days. So anyway, I ended up playing, and then I played for 2 years, and then I ended up playing higher level, and I was 12 years old, and I'm at the rink, and there was a junior league in the Montreal, the Metro League, and there was a scout called Chuck Cato, and Chuck Cato is a guy that drafted Bernie Perron, George Langsford, who played for Detroit. He had Gilles Breton, he had Phil Mayer, he had myself. And I'm 12 years old, and this scout's talking to me, and he says, "You're very special, He says, "How would you like to play in the Bruins organization?"
At
Oh,
12.
at 12 years
Yeah.
old, and I said, "Oh, I'd like that." I said, "Sure."
Yeah.
And then there was another guy that was,
And there's only 6 teams in the league, so you're
Yeah.
one of 6,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The tw-
Yeah,
almo-
yeah,
20%.
and there was he had already picked Bernie Perron. He had picked some good ones. So I'm standing there, and there's a guy. I'm playing. I played that half year. In the middle of the half year, there's a guy from Verdun, which was Metro League. They called the Maple Leafs Mr. Singleton. His name was Pete Singleton. He played was a star in American League. So he comes over to me. He says, "How would you like to play for the Maple Leafs?" I says, "Well," I says, "right now I'm talking to Boston." I says, "Mr. Cato, he seems to know his goalie." "Oh," he says, "Chuck got after you." He says, "I'm in trouble." So I was 14. I went to my first training camp, junior A training camp. And then,
Had you already signed with the Bruins
no,
organization?
no, I didn't sign.
Because back then
and-
they'd sign you early, and you were stuck. You were
in
with them for life.
In those days, the Metro League, which was Montreal Canadian, all the teams that played in Metro League belonged to Montreal Forum. See, there was a Metro League, then the Montreal Forum had a team in the OHL. But all the stars from the Metro League played for the Montreal Canadian Junior Canadians.
So how did the Canadians not see you or get you?
Well, they tried to get me, but you see, my dad in 1947 was first round pick for in the NHL, first French Canadian guy taken in 1947.
Your father was a first round draft pick in the NHL.
Yeah, but he was a pick, and he ended up playing in the U.S. Hockey League in Texas for Dallas and all that. And
So but he didn't make the NHL. So you were the first Bouchard to make
with 6 teams in those days.
Yeah.
It was pretty hard, and he had a good record. One day I met Gordie Howe, and Gordie Howe was standing there, and he's saying to me, he says, "Your dad, Marcel?" I says, "Yeah, my dad's Marcel." He says, "That's why I never dropped my stick in a fight ever again." I says, "What do you mean?" He says, we're playing in the Ottawa City League at one time, and he says, Mel Schmidt told me that number 17, the place for Buckingham, he says, don't bug him. He'll kick you to hell. He says he's a mean guy. So Gordie tried him, and he lost the fight. And then my dad went back into the U.S. Hockey League, and Gordie was playing for Omaha, and he saw him, and he says, no way. He told the guys on this team, leave him alone. So, and Mil Schmidt, after I got drafted by the Bruins, my dad came to Boston, and Mil Schmidt sitting there and all that, and Beb Whitland saying, your dad had quite the fight with Milt 3 times in Ottawa City League, and Milt got cleaned up real bad. And he says Bauer and Dumar finally told him, "Oh, we forgot to tell you, he's a Canadian Armed Forces welterweight boxer." So,
by the way, this guy's got some hands, and he can knock you out.
Yeah, and as soon as he said that to Mil Schmidt, they told him that on the bench, he only saw red. He wanted to fight him. I'm going to show.
What position did your dad play?
My dad played forward.
Okay.
He was a center, and one shift at center, one shift on defense. Then he took a break. And Milschmidt was telling the story to the boys on the bus. He says, I tried to get him at the end of the second shift.
When he's tired, yeah.
And he says, he cleaned me up. He says, I didn't even have the gloves off. He says, I think he hit me 5 times, So, and then he says, I didn't realize, he says, I walked in the rink that one morning at practice and I'm looking at this guy. And he says, that's a face you never forget, And he says, what are you doing here? Oh, he says, my son's goalie. You're not. And he says, Dan's not your son. He says, yeah, my dad's, my son, yeah. He says, wow, he came a long way. And my dad played under Eddie Shore, and Eddie Shore made some of the best goalie ever in the NHL. He was known for the best goal, probably the first goalie coach. And that's who the guys in Russia learned from, is Eddie Shore, a lot of stuff.
Now we're talking old-time hockey, Harper.
Yeah.
Eddie Shore.
Kelly, Rudy is a friend of mine, and Kelly said when he started, he was one of the better skaters on the ice, and they wanted to have the best skater in the net. Was that kind of the case for you as well? You were one of the better players?
Yeah, I was playing my junior hockey in Sorel, and one year we had a guy called Oscar Aubuchon. No, that's an old boss.
That's not Orest Kinderchuk, but it's pretty close.
Yeah,
Oscar,
yeah.
what is
Aubuchon? Aubuchon. He
Okay.
played for the New York Americans, and he was our coach. He came out of nowhere. Nobody knew Oscar Aubuchon. All of a sudden, he was our coach, and he comes in and he says, "Look, you skate well, but he says, I want you to skate better than that." He says, "You see that girl over there? She's the best figure skater in the area. You're going to learn from her." And I had to go at 4:00 after my school for an hour and learn figure skating, learn my hedges and all that.
Balance, everything is different.
Everything to this day.
skate itself is different,
I skate, goalie skates got wide blades and all that. My skate never sharpened.
It's interesting because it seems like the goalie's either the best skater or a lot of times it's usually the worst skater. You put that kid in the net. So it's one or the other.
And, I was a good skater. And as a matter of fact, that helped me when I was with Quebec, which was scouting. I'll tell you another little anecdote with scouting. And I'm with Mr. Draper that played for the Red Wings. Well, his uncle was a scout, top scout. He was a chief scout for Quebec for the amateur hockey and for the amateur players. And one day I'm on the road and scouting goalies, and he said, "What do you think of this goalie and all that?" He says, "He's okay," but I said, "I'm not in love with him." I says, "I'm in love with that guy, that defenseman." And he says, "What's that?" I said, "That number 3, Adam Foote." I says, "Wow." I says, "He's probably one of the finest skater I've seen in the last 20 years." And he looked at me and he said, "What do you mean?" I says, "Look at that guy. He skates backward faster than forward." And I says, "Look, it's effortless. He just moves like he can spin on a dime." And I says, "That turns me on." I says, to see a guy with that kind of skill. And he was looking at me and he says, "Oh, wait, the other scouts are coming." He says, "Scouts used to sit in the same." He said, "Don't talk about him. Don't talk about him now. And
don't give your secret away."
He says, "Don't talk about him." So we ended up talking about him. We had a draft meeting, and Draper goes, "We're going to draft Adam Foote." And all the other guys says, "Oh no, Adam's Foote's not the best." So he says, "Who would vote for with you with that?" I put my hand up. And the coach the general manager looked at me and said, "Dan, he's your pick." "Yeah, we pick him." Then all the other guys asked him, "Okay," I says, "show me who can skate like this. Show me who could do this backward. Show me who could do this, who could do this, could do that." Nobody could. So we drafted him. So that's, you see, my learning figure skating taught me the importance of, it's good to be a good skater when you're a goalie. And you're right, Kelly Rudy was a great, very, very good skater.
What I learned in football, I'll tell people this. I think Mike and I were on the air here in Atlanta, and I was talking about this guy's got really good feet. He's got good feet. And someone texted us. Remember, we had the text line. It didn't always work, but when it did, what do you mean good feet? What does that mean? And I probably didn't say it clearly enough to where the listener understood. It's not that I like that he wears a size 11 shoe. It's the way he moves, his balance, his ability to go forward and backwards, his ability to keep powerful position, but yet also be fast at the same time. You learn to recognize stuff like that. I'm sure you did as well. And being a guy that had to spend time with the figure skaters, you learned who could pick up their feet better, faster, quicker, right?
That's right.
You recognized all that.
Oh,
And Adam Foote, how many cups did he win? Turned out to be a great selection,
yeah,
right?
he did very well. But also, you talk about good feet. You know, I remember when me and Kurt Bennett, there's a lady that used to be called Tybee Dacia. She was married to the guy that was Tarzan,
Johnny
Johnny
Weissmuller?
Weissmuller?
Yeah.
Johnny Weissmuller.
Good call, Mike.
And that lady Tybee, her brother, was doing decorating something in a new house I built, and she says, "Oh, I'll put your hockey players and your football players." And there was a guy called Mike McCoy, and there was a couple other guys.
Big Mike played with the Packers.
Yeah, and all that, and we were about six guys, 2 basketball player, 2 football player, 2 hockey player. She says, "You give me a week with you guys, I'm going to make you guys elite in your sport." And so we kind of laughed. We were doing all the plies, all the stuff at the bar, all the little things, that look so sissy and all that. But you know what? On the Thursday morning, we could hardly walk because we had used muscles
Never used.
You'd never
and
used before.
joints and the middle of the joints that we never used. And
Well, good footwork. I mean, it helps in any sport. So
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't do anything without feet, but the balance and the strength that you get from using stuff that you're not always familiar with.
Yeah.
That's kind of the original cross training.
that's right.
our guest, by the way, is Dan Bouchard. Folks in Atlanta, if you follow hockey, you remember Dan Bouchard as the great goaltender for the Atlanta Flames for all those years from 72 to 80. So getting back, Dan, to you grew up in the Montreal area. You're drafted by the Boston Bruins. You spend a couple years in the Bruins minor league system. Their number 3 goalie during the heyday of the Big Bad Bruins, by the way. How did you end up getting, obviously, they couldn't protect everybody. You get taken by the Atlanta Flames when they come into the league in 1972.
I come to Atlanta in 1972. My wife, I was in nursing in Toronto, and I went back. I went back 3 days later after I'd been in Atlanta. And my wife says, "Well, how'd you like it?" I said, "It's beautiful. It's got trees everywhere." And I says, "It's a country town." I says, just.
But did you think hockey would make it in the Deep South at the time? Because L.A. had been in the league for only 5 years or so, and the jury was still out about Los Angeles. Did you think it would even make it?
In 72, LA had been in the league a little longer than that. Yeah.
Yeah, 66 or 7 with
67.
But here in Atlanta,
You're right. 5 years. Yeah.
in Atlanta, the Braves, the Falcons, and the Hawks all came in right about the same time, and we went from no professional sports, and then by 72, when you get here,
that was Tom Cousins. No, that was his vision. Tom Cousin always said that if you have pro sport, because when he bought, the Hawks from St. Louis, he says we need to have a team, and it's when he got Pistol Pete. And the sad part about Pistol Pete, he was so far ahead of his time.
Yeah.
I remember we remember going on the I went in Boston. John Havlicek and Bill Russell would be on the court. We go. I like to shoot basketball. We used to go and Russell and Havlicek. They were great guys, But when I got in with Pistol Pete, I mean, day and night. And Tom Cousins says, "You built your team. You got to have, a team for city recognition, So when the Flames came in, we got into the NHL, and the savior of the thing is the Omni was in Finnish. We had to play our first 18 games on the road. So that was really the saving thing that happened. That's how our franchise got so good so quick.
Yeah, I mean, you guys played. It was strong, good hockey, and you had a strong following too. A lot of people think, "Oh, the Atlanta Flames left, nobody." But you guys, I mean, you packed the Omni for many,
You
many
know what?
years.
There was a guy that was the accountant for the. It's good to get close to accountant, when you work for a team.
You,
If
you
you're
want
going,
to know the money man, Dan.
you know if you're going to get paid, But uh, he used the accountant. I used to talk to him, and he says, if it wasn't the Flames, he says the Hawks wouldn't have lived, wouldn't survive. He says,
Because the cousins owned back both the Flames and the Hawks,
Yeah.
and probably the Omni also.
yeah,
Okay.
he owned it. There was 5 owners in the group.
But what happened there at the end? Then in 19, well, he was in real estate or something. Then real estate, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan. And then the real estate market kind of collapsed, and he had to sell the team.
Well, that's not what
No?
really. That's not what really
Okay,
happened.
what really happened? Because
What really
he ended up
happened,
selling it for what, $1 million to Nelson Scalabania, who
No,
Calgary. Oh, we're gonna get the real story here.
You're not.
So-
You're not in the ballpark there, buddy.
Okay,
Okay. What happened is I go to the All-Star game. I had a guy. I was a guy that signed the first year I signed in the NHL. It was Eagleson that signed me. When he signed me,
oh God,
he signed me to it. I go in the office for the Cliff. No, that's my first thing when I get to Atlanta. Cliff puts a contract in front of me, and it says 2 years. And I look at it, and I'm reading the contract, and Cliff says, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Mr. Fletcher, I'm reading the contract." He says, "You're reading the contract?" I says, "Yeah." I says, "My grandpa told me one thing. Well, I always remember that." He's a fine businessman. I says, "The big letter give it, the small take it away." So I'm reading the contract.
what he's expecting you just to sign, not even look at it.
Yeah. The guys in those days,
Hey,
whatever your agent said, that's okay.
Well, you really didn't have any negotiating power back
But
then.
I'm a goalie. I'm stupid. No, they're supposed to be stupid on top, So anyway,
But you got your degree and everything.
Yeah,
And you know how
so-
to read in 2
and
languages.
I knew how to read in 2 languages. So I told Cliff, I says, "No, it's a 1-year contract."
You wanted 1 year; they were offering you 2.
Yeah.
Why?
So
I would think it would be the reverse.
no, the World Hockey was coming. The next year, if I have a good year, I can.
Go to the other league.
I have some leverage.
Right.
Mhm.
And so Eagleson, they put him on one of those boxes. And they used to have the old box. You ever seen Perry Mason when they flick the buck when talk on the phone and all that? So,
The little intercom system.
yeah, the intercom system. So Eagleson says, no, Fletcher says, Danny doesn't want to sign the contract. He says, he only says it's for 1 year. And Eagleson tells me, "You stupid frog, just sign that thing." It's a frog. It's a French-Canadian player. So
Yeah.
that was kind of, it's like the N word in Canada.
Yeah.
So anyway.
He's degrading you.
Yeah. So I says, Mr. Eagleson, I says, I just fired you. And I told Cliff, you want me to sign for your team, you're going to give me a 1-year contract, or in 40 minutes, I'll be out of the building.
And you got the 1 year deal.
So he gave me a 1-year deal.
How much did you end up making that year?
That year, I made $40,000.
Wow.
I got $40,000, and I didn't fuss. I'm going to say, hey. And Cliff says, it's kind of stupid. You're not even proven. And I says, look, you draft me. We're 2 goalies right now. And I said, I got 1 goal. I says, you see, I have a dream. It's written down, and I'm going to be number 1 goalie for Atlanta. And it's the way it's going to be.
And you were the number 1 goalie their entire history in Atlanta. So
anyway, because
you bet on yourself and you won that bet.
Well, there was not a bet. You got to. I did the Dale Carnegie course that Bobby Orr given to me because I was not able to get a ring for the Stanley Cup like the other guys. The 3rd goalie the year 2 years prior.
That was what, 72 when the
72
Bruins
against
won?
the Rangers. Yeah. So Bobby says, I got in the mail one day a Dale Carnegie course, and I went to Montreal and I took the Dale Carnegie course, and it's the best thing. That's the best gift.
So you didn't get the ring; you got Dale Carnegie course instead.
Yeah, and I learned how to build the dream. I learned how to deal with people, how to encourage players, how to.
In your 8 years that the Atlanta Flames were here, and you were the number 1 goalie every single year, was there ever times during that 8 years where you almost left, had opportunities to leave?
No, I never, because I was.
You loved the city. You loved everything.
It was
here.
great, but again, when I had this new agent, after Eagleson, I fired Eagleson. I hired this guy called.
That's a whole other story, Harper, with Eagleson. We know what happened there.
Yeah. I hired, but I got him back though.
Eagleson?
I got him back. Yeah.
Okay. For those that don't know, Eagleson was famously Bobby Orr's attorney.
Yeah.
Ended up being a scam artist.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly.
Stole a lot of money.
Exactly. But
you got back at him.
You're preceding me now. So, but anyway, it's okay. Your story is right. When I went to Boston the first time, Bobby Orr looks at me and he says, "Oh, the Eagle says you're in trouble with the Eagle." I says, "I'm not in trouble in the Eagle." I said, "Bobby, he's a crook." I says, that's when he signed with the Chicago.
How did you know that? Because this was before anybody thought.
Well, he tried to screw me. I says, "Look, he tried to screw me." I says, "Oh, I want a 1-year contract. I want to be able." And that year, well, I says, I was ready to play. I believe if you believe in yourself, if you can't bet on yourself, who's going to bet on you?
Yeah. Good. By the way, again, and going back to history, late in life, Bobby Orr, I mean, when he retired, practically broke. Eagleson has stolen all his money.
Yeah, because they had offered him 20% of the team, and he never got it.
Yeah. Okay. So you said I was a little off with the Tom Cousins and what happened there at the end of the night.
But he didn't. So you were off because I went to the All-Star game. Capstein.
What year is this?
In '79, Capstein had always about 22 to 25 players in the All-Star game. He was the agent, the super agent. He was the Jerry Maguire. That's who they made the movie after. He was, always on the phone, this, that, everything. But he was the best agent. He loved the sport. So I go to All-Star game, and Gene Tennis and Raleigh Finger says to me, "Come to our meeting. We're going to have a players meeting with MLB. We're going to go over the numbers for." So I says, "Okay." In those days, I was doing stuff with actuary here in town. I was learning the actuary business, what it was about investment and all that, and money and this, all that. So I go to the meeting, and I'm sitting in the meeting, and I says, "Where's all the money in the NHL? The guys in the pension." Yeah, guys in Montreal that 9 Stanley Cup in their fingers, and they were getting $4,700 a year for their pension.
Baseball led the way.
Baseball,
in terms of thinking ahead,
players
not
union.
only your career but after your career.
Big time. Baseball business was so far ahead. So
how fortunate were you to have Gene and Raleigh? Now Raleigh was with Milwaukee at the time.
No, Raleigh was with Oakland too.
He was still with Oakland in '79.
Yeah, 78.
Yeah, I don't think early '80s he went to Milwaukee.
Early '80s he went to Milwaukee. But anyway,
they were part of the Swingin' A's, right?
So
for those
I got all the numbers, and the guy starts to gives me, and I says, "Give me the algorithm," and I says what's your algorithm? And there's another thing that we talk about, and he says, "I'll give it to you." He says, "You know how to read that?" I says, "Yeah." I says, "You guys don't match." I says, "You're in the NHL, we all match." And I says, "That's what bothers me, because all those players over the years always match, and very often some of the teams that give you your pension and they match." And so, and those guys retiring with $7,000-8,000 after 8, 9, 10 years they've played in the NHL, it didn't work. The guys that played 12 years in Major League Baseball, at age 45, he was getting $42,000. It was not. I says,
you didn't have that retirement plan or pension or anything.
I says, "There's money missing." So I didn't. I says, "There's something wrong." So I got back from the players meeting. I got all their algorithm. I go and sit with the guys who I was working with, and I says, I found something. I found some money that the NHL owners are stealing from the players. Oh, he says, "You better be careful how you approach that." So, so he looked after me by the end of the week.
Now, were you the player rep with the?
No, I was not the player rep.
Did the NHL have
no,
a Players
no,
Association?
I was not the player rep, because all the player reps that played was in the NHL. They were all represented by Eagleson on each team in the NHL. You see, he had the wagon circle.
Sure, he did.
You know, he had the hands on.
Right.
So when Carl Brewer, so we used to say there's money missing somewhere, and when you had a guy that was a defenseman in Boston, used to say, Eagleson is stealing. They're stealing money. There's money missing. The Players Association are not doing a fair job to represent the players. So he was right.
Because Eagleson was not only the top agent, but he also was the head of the players union.
Yeah, he was the.
But none of that money was trickling down to the players. It all
No.
was going into his pocket.
It was going to the owners. He was in bed with the owners.
Okay.
Yeah.
When he went to Florida, he stayed on Wirt's yacht. He was getting all the perks.
Okay.
So there was some shenanigans going on.
Oh yeah.
And you were exposed to some of that. But in terms of Atlanta, didn't Cousins want to?
No. But what happens? Numbers don't lie. That's when you learn. Once you start to learn actuary work and all that, numbers are very accurate. They build the picture. So the guy by the end of the week says, Danny, you're right. He says, how much money? I says, we're about $77 million missing the players till.
In the fund.
And the fund, the players.
Right.
And he says, that's pretty bad. So he said, what you going to do? I said, I'm going to call Tom Cousin. So I called Tom Cousin. And I says, Tom, I'm going to bring you a paper. I got a format. I got a logarithm. And I says, the algorithm. And I says, you go check everything out. I says, you can have your businessman, whoever, call me, or we can meet with you and we could show you. But I says, the owners are stealing money. And he says,
he was one of the owners.
Hey, he was one of the owner. And I said, I says, I remember you gave me a Bible, when my first year in the NHL. And I says, I know you're a man with your word. You're going to check it out. So he said, Bouchard. He said, oh, on you, you're a goalie. He says that to me like that. You're a goalie. How the hell would you know anything about money?
Again, the inclination is that goalies are dumb, but you broke the mold.
But anyway, so I says, Mr. Cousin, just look at the numbers. I says, don't go that I'm a goalie. Don't go. I says, I'm right on.
But that was his polite way of saying, you're starting to meddle in some areas you shouldn't be meddling with.
That's
Fair
right.
enough, right? Is that
That's
close?
Right. That's right. But
and
my idea, you see, Eagleson had insulted me, and he shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, Curt Flood in baseball ended up being the first one to test free agency, and guess what happened to Curt Flood? He never played another pitch.
No.
Not another inning. They found a way to get rid of him. And I know that there were some high walls in between owners and players in all sports.
Mm-hmm.
Basketball had their issue. Football certainly has had theirs. Baseball was trying to break that barrier.
That's right. And baseball had done that. And you see, I had a baseball agent. And when I signed my second year of the contract, because the first year the Flames almost made the playoff, I was hitting 650 when I played during that season. And the owner of one of the guys that was the money guy for Tom Cousin overseeing, he came in from Philadelphia. He said to me, he told my agent, I'm going to give Dan 8-year contract.
Mm-hmm.
My second year, I got an 8-year contract.
Which is huge back in those days.
Oh, those days, nobody knew.
How are you going to play 8 years?
But nobody knew I had an 8-year contract.
Oh, wow.
That was a big secret. No, the guy gave me an 8-year contract. And my agent, in those days, he says, well, they're going to give him the upfront $250,000 tax-free loan.
72 or 3?
73.
Oh, my goodness. $250,000.
Yeah. I got $250,000 loan upfront.
Right.
Tax-free loan.
Bought some acreage in Marietta.
It was 18%. No, the interest in those days was 18%.
Yes, it was, right.
And all these owners were stealing the money at 18%. I caught them 8 years later.
Okay, so Dan, you confront Tom Cousins, the owner of the Atlanta Flames in 1979, saying, okay, hey, I can see that the owners are funneling some money here. He kind of, as Harper said,
he looked at everything.
Right.
And all of a sudden, Sarah Rose was a girl from Australia, was his secretary. She calls me, Mr. Bouchard, you're going to meet Mr. Cousin and Mr. So-and-so. The guy was with the guy that started Equifax. And he says, you're going to sit down with him. And he says, you're going to bring you, we're going to give him the papers. He says, he's going to look into it. But he says, so far, you're right. Mr. Cousin wants to talk to you. So we got at Peachtree Country Club. We sat there. We had the famous vegetable soup and the and the biscuit and all that. And the guy, Mr. Cousin says, "Well, Bouchard, I'm going to tell you one thing. You're right in one place and you're wrong on the other thing." But he says, as far being right, we are stealing from the players. And
Owners are screwing the players.
And he says the players are the engine of the sport. So he says it can't happen. And he says, what are we going to do about it? Well, I says, first of all, you got to recognize it. So the guy from Equifax says, I says, I got reservation. I says, Canadian health system was paying into the NHL pension some money, and the American owners was taking the money. So I says, that's $77 million, this money missing. He says, okay, I'm going to find it. So Tom says, I'm going to give you all the information. But when Tom Cousin went to the meetings of the Breakers that November,
Owners meeting?
Owners meeting.
Okay.
Well, we were playing in St. Louis. And I remember waiting in front of the bus that night. We were going to the arena in St. Louis, and Cliff Fletcher comes over. You big blink bout, Bouchard. He says, "You think you're a genius? You think you're smart and all that?" I says, "Cliff, there's guys in Montreal, guys that won Stanley Cup. There's guys like Ted Lindsay. There's guys." I says, "Those guys were the pioneer of the game. They're getting nothing for their pension." I says, if I know about it, I don't say anything. I'm worse than the owner stealing. And he says, why you stick your nose in something you don't know? I says, that's where you're wrong. I know a little bit more than you do.
Was Cliff Fletcher the general manager of the Flames the whole time they were here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then he went to Calgary with them.
Okay.
And you know what?
So
Cliff Fletcher's still getting paid by Toronto Maple Leaf as consultant. So that's a racket of pro hockey.
Okay, so he's upset that you're rocking the boat, that you're sticking your nose in there. The owner of the Atlanta Flames says, you know what, Dan, you're right. Players have been getting screwed by the owners all these years. There's all this money missing. So,
but I've got to go look into it. And then he goes to the owners' meetings, and everybody tells him to be quiet. Don't they?
Does he bring it up at the owners? He does.
He brought it to the players' meetings, and they told them.
I mean, was he kicked out of the NHL? Is that why he sold?
Well, why do you think the next summer we were gone?
They're in Calgary.
Because the story is that he sold real estate was going down. He needed the money.
Oh, he was going in bankruptcy. He was in the receivership.
And Nelson Scalabania offered him, Calgary businessman offered him $1 million for the franchise.
It was Scalabania was only a flim-flam guy. It was the people, the oil guys that bought him.
So did he sell the team because he did need the money, or did he sell the team because the NHL wanted him out?
No. He needed the money, and the NHL was not going to let him stay. And Calgary had just been announced the next city for the Winter Olympics. They needed to have a professional team in Calgary.
Do you believe not Scalabania, but Cousins, the Flames owner, was on the level guy? And
he was on the level, because he told me, he says, you not minding your own business was indirectly a saving grace for me. He says, I had 157 family working for me. And he says, I was going to declare bankruptcy. I was going to drop him. And he says, all of a sudden I get a $20 million injection Calgary. And he says he still owed $4 million on the $6 million franchise they hadn't paid.
How much did Cousin end up getting for the team then?
About $24 million.
So, okay, so that's not all the story that I had.
No.
History.
No.
There's a book in here. I'm telling you, Dan's got all this stuff down. The first time I heard this, I was fascinated. Tom
No,
Clancy needs to
and
write
you
the book.
see, so but Tom Cousin, his saving grace was his honesty, and through his honesty, he saved his business, and the rest, he started to do big deals with Deutsche Bank and all that, and
Okay.
he built $1 billion empire.
Okay, so the Flames are now in Calgary. Tom Cousins is out of the NHL. When does this come to a head? What happened? Do the owners just make believe it, sweep it under the rug, nothing ever happened, or do you
Oh,
continue?
nobody knew what
Did you
really.
continue to kind of
Nobody
sound the
knew
alarm?
Nobody knew what really happened. Nobody knew what happened. What happened is after that, I didn't say anything.
Because you played half a year in Calgary, ended up going to Quebec for a
Yeah,
little bit.
Then I go.
You only played for about 3 or 4 more years.
I played 6 years after
Six.
that.
Okay, 6
I
more.
played till 86. So,
Okay.
but I go to see Fletcher. I ask him to trade me. He said, no.
Do you continue to bring it up, or because you know how it is with whistleblowers, you can, they could throw you out. Did you just
but
let go?
I didn't. I let that thing with the players, that package I had. Tom Cousin told me, whenever you want the package, I'll give you all the numbers. He says, I don't want him to be flying all over the place. I says, Mr. Fletcher, Mr. Cousin, will you want to keep the numbers? And I says, you promised me, he gave me a letter, promissory letter I can have the numbers back. I got the numbers back. When in 1986, when I get traded to Winnipeg from Quebec, I go to Winnipeg, and John Ferguson's a general manager, and he picked me up at the airport. I go, John, what are you doing? What is this? A general manager picking up a goalie just got traded? He says, never mind, I got to talk to you.
We need to talk.
He says, we need to talk. I says, I never seen that. A GM picking up a guy.
No, usually I'm just some assistant equipment guy picks you up in a little rented car. You're in partially a limo probably, or at least Mercedes.
No, I'm with John, and John says, okay, look, so and so is going to take all your equipment in. I'll take you to the hotel. We're going to eat at the steakhouse, and he says we got to talk. So I sat down with him, and he says, "Where's the number? I want the books. I want the books." So what? You're the one that's got the numbers. Gordy Al called me, and somebody told him that you have the whole shebang. You got the whole thing, the whole lowdown. I says, yeah, I have it, but I says, I'm still in the NHL. I don't want to be blackballed. He says, well, you got 1 more year. You got two more years. You got 1 more year after this year. I says, I know, but I says, I just want to have peace, then after that, I'm going to go to phase 2. And he says, okay. So we ended up playing the playoffs. So there was 11 games in Winnipeg, and we were not in the playoff. We had not made the playoff. We were fine with the LA Kings. And he comes to me, John Ferguson comes to me, and he says, we just fired a coach, and said, I'm going to start coaching. And he says, you want to start playing? Are you okay? You're injured still? I said, I've never been injured. So that was another story. He says, okay, well, he says, look, you're playing. We make the playoff. I don't buy you out. I says, you can't buy me out. I says, I caught the league in collusion. Because Capstein had the first collusion with Gene Tennis. And
his free agency, with
the MLB,
right from the A's.
With MLB,
right?
So
Major League Baseball.
So I was the first guy with the same lawyer, now with the NHL. In NHL. So I says, my contract is guaranteed. I says, all the owners signed it. And I says, when they did that, I also signed I won't get 1 vote in the NHL for anything, even though I had 300 wins, more than 300 wins. I played 625 in my career as a goalie in the NHL. I won well over 300. I never got a vote for the
Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, you're not going to be in Toronto.
I'm not planning to go to Toronto ever. But that's not the important. The important is the players got their money.
How was this finally resolved? That's probably what everyone's asking.
In 1991, if you ever go and see the settlement of the NHL settlement, Carl Brewer and Gordie Howe are the ones that are the people of record.
Did it go to court?
Oh yeah, it was in court for 4 years.
Mhm.
And Carl Brewer's
In America or in Canada?
in Canada,
Yeah.
and they had to pay 144 million
Wow.
to the players.
To make them whole?
Yeah, Johnny Busick, all those guys end up getting checks for $250,000 and all that, and it was well deserved. Those were the pioneers,
Of course.
But
They
to
were the
them,
stars.
to them, it was like winning the lottery. To them, that was the thing. But I never wanted my name to be mentioned.
Because I am a hockey historian, and this is the first I've heard the story.
And you see, my dad says bragging about it's not going to make it better. He says you got to get to the result you're supposed to, and he says let it go.
But you're just giving facts. You're not bragging about it.
Well, facts. If you got the horn, you can play. And
why
notes.
Is this? Have you told? I assume you've told this story publicly before.
Oh yeah. I explained that when they had an All-Star game in 2007 year with the NHL with the Trashers
here in Atlanta.
Yeah, they had the Trashers game. There was an article in that magazine about it.
Because you hear the story about what's the Cardinals' name player again?
Curt Flood.
Everyone knows the Curt Flood story. Yours is a little bit similar to what you did for the pensions for the NHL.
I did not blow. I blew the whistle because I let the owner. I told the owner, listen, you got to take that horse. You got to ride that horse because you're a owner.
Yeah.
If you're an honest man.
You lasted only a few months when the team moved to Calgary. You were only with the Calgary Flames for a very short time. You, in fact, were the last.
Was 4.5 months.
Okay, 4.5 months in. You were the last original Atlanta Flame to be with the organization. Mm-hmm. When Cliff Fletcher, who stayed with the team as the GM in Calgary, did he get rid of you? Part of the reason because you were
no. Because when I went to see Cliff wasn't even thinking about the thing with the numbers and all that. We were in Calgary. That was the best thing that ever happened to Cliff Fletcher. He got a brand new contract. Everybody won from that.
Yeah, and 3 or 4 years later, he ends up winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, he won the Stanley Cup 3 years after I was there. I got traded, but I went to see him. I traded myself. I called the guy in Quebec. They're in 21st place out of 21 team, and I said, "Hey, you need to make the playoffs." And that was how I did it. And Cliff Fletcher says, no. So. There was 29 games left when I went to Quebec, and we won 24 out of 29.
Wow. You had to go back home.
So we made the playoff.
And you had a pretty good playoff run, too, if I remember.
Oh, yeah. We won the playoff. Then we had the rush. We had the three Czech players, the Chastny.
Stastny players,
the
the brothers.
Peter,
Anton,
and Peter, Anton. What's the other one?
I was hoping William. I don't remember the third one. Peter Stastny and oh well, we'll have to look it up.
I don't have that in my memory bank either. I'm just fascinated with the way that you're able to go and keep playing with what you knew.
Yeah, but the whole idea is to keep playing because I want to finish my career. I got a contract. I want to finish my career.
If you blow the whistle too loud, you will not be on the ice anymore. Correct?
Yeah. I was not, and so anyway, I went to Calgary. I went to Winnipeg. We made the playoff. We were in Washington, and John Ferguson comes to me the next morning and he says to me, he says, Danny, he says, there's going to be, we're not going to buy your contract. I says, you better talk to your owner because I says, you can't buy it. And you know what? John Ferguson never saw my contract.
But you played that 1 year in Winnipeg, and that was it.
I played that 1 year, went to training camp the next year. There was Dan Maloney was a coach for Winnipeg. His agent was Eagleson. Do you think I was going to be? Do you think I was going to make that team?
Nope.
So you were done. You went then. Well, I think you played a season overseas in Europe, maybe.
Yeah, I went to Europe after that. As soon as I was, I went to Winnipeg after that Winnipeg issue. I got out. David Poyle was GM for Abe Poland in Washington. And he calls me and he says, look, go and play in Europe for about a month, 2 months. And he says, then he says, I'm going to come and get you. He says, I'll give you so much money. We'll play. You can play one more year. I says, okay, I'm going to go to Europe. But he says, just keep it under your hat. I remember I was driving the U-Haul back from Winnipeg back to Atlanta. We stopped in Chicago. I got a call from Poyle, and he says, there's a team in Europe, in Fribourg, Switzerland, wants you. And he says, why don't you go there? So I went to play there. I played 4 games, blew my left knee, ACL. I says, that's it.
Yeah. And you were what, probably mid-30s by that time, early to
I was
mid-30s?
37, 38 years
37,
old.
38.
Wow.
Okay. So,
Yeah. So then, 2 years later, I needed brain surgery. I had 2 brain tumors, and
okay. And we're going to touch upon that, but come bring this full circle. There's people that believe the Atlanta Flames left because the support wasn't here. That was never the case.
No. The Flames kept the Hawks in Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Cousin tried to sell them. He sold the Hawks to Turner.
Well, part of the fan base too, Dan, wouldn't you say that in any given night, if you're playing the Flyers, 20, 30, 40% of the crowd was there because they wanted to root for the Flyers. That's what I noticed with the Thrashers. When the Penguins came into town, half the rink was wearing Penguin jerseys.
That's a little bit of the scenario with Atlanta becoming a new city.
Yeah.
Everybody moving over here and all that.
But the rink was packed, though. That's the cool thing about it, right?
We always had it sold out. We were always sold out. We always had our 14-6.
And the Thrashers used to always draw, really to the last couple of years when that Atlanta Spirit group didn't give a damn about hockey and people stopped coming because the product sucked for 12 years.
Yeah.
But the support is here. So
the support is there. It's just that if you're going to build a team, a ice hockey team in Atlanta, you got to build it on solid ground. You got to build a real team. Like you look at the playoffs right now. Look, you look at the beginning of the season. You know anything about hockey. Florida is going to be there. Everybody told me, who you cheer for this year? So Florida's going to be there at the end. I don't care. And I says, out west, I don't know. Because I says, there's Edmonton, there's the Vegas team, and there's
Colorado's phenomenal, right?
And Colorado. But Colorado has already inside problems. I knew from Joe Sakic. So anyway.
But it's still a good team, though, right?
Still a good team.
And talk, when we first started, Atlanta and the Kings were the furthest south of the Mason-Dixon line.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got a team in Dallas, Phoenix, Anaheim. You've got 2 teams in Florida. The expansion has been amazing. People love the game,
Mm-hmm.
the speed, everything like that. The game has grown, although there are some problems left and right. Would you imagine that when you got here in 1972, that there'd be 2 teams in Florida and there'd be 5 that are south of the Mason-Dixon line?
And look, Tampa won 3 times.
I know.
And look at that. The whole idea is you just got to, it's a business.
It's entertainment. You're right.
It's entertainment. It's business. And the people that build the teams the right way are always going to, because it's all down the middle. No different than baseball. No different than football. Goalie, centers, defense. Goalie, centers, defense. It's how it's built.
Quarterback, offensive, defensive line. Yeah. If you got those, you can put a product out there.
Basketball, it's your centers.
And a point guard.
Former NHL goaltender Dan Bouchard joining us here at Business Radio X. So there's now talk. There's a couple investment groups that want to bring the NHL back to Atlanta. I'm sure Harper and I have our opinions. Your thoughts? Will the NHL come back here? Will it be successful in Atlanta?
Yeah, it will be successful. And even they say, they're going to build it here in Johns Creek or something like that.
Alpharetta or Cumming.
There's no problem. The old saying, build it, they'll come. Yeah. You got the right concept. You got the right building. And you put a team that's good. Right now, you built in the NHL teams. Shoot, you should start with the playoff even before you start the season. The amount of good players you can get versus
we saw that with Vegas. Saw that with Seattle. I mean, you could put a good team together from day one.
You get good hockey people that understand the game,
but now
and the numbers, the money in the game,
right,
is being ignored. But I think It's whatever the guys get, they get it.
But you
That's the way I
got
look at it.
two ownership groups. You're looking at probably $1 billion for an expansion franchise in the NHL.
Yeah.
You've got two groups that are willing to spend that money. They're willing to build hockey exclusive arenas north of the city. I mean, I think it's going to be. I think it would be a whole. I think it would do very, very well.
Once they do this, look, I live stone throw away from SunTrust. The
Brave Stadium.
the Brave Stadium, Truist Park, and look what they've done with it. Look what they've done for that area. It's just like it's a hub. It's unbelievable.
Live, work, retail. It's all
right.
there.
You could do this over here, and the same thing can happen. It's just replicate.
I agree.
The change that I noticed, baseball, just before the Braves moved to Cobb County. Remember Mel from some of our calls at 92.9?
Yeah, one of the listeners.
We called them the Cobb County Braves.
Mm-hmm.
But just before that happened, you had Philadelphia, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, several different teams built, New York, build massive stadiums on downtown city property. What the Braves did, what I thought was very unique about that, they went and bought some land. They didn't get the same amount of money from Atlanta. They didn't get the right deal. So they went out and got their own property. They built on their land and they own it. And they get to put the apartments up and they get to receive all the parking, all the taxes, all the other things that Cobb County worked out with them. And now they own everything.
What is it? A $40 billion business now?
For Major League Baseball?
No, that whole complex.
Oh, absolutely.
Probably,
yeah. If not more.
Yeah, but not minimum.
I'm sure the Braves right now are going, gosh, we should have bought more land because we
That's
could
right.
put even more out there. But that concept, that was new to sport. And that is, I think, where I'm sure the Cincinnatis and Pittsburghs of the world were, gosh, I wish we had done the same thing. Instead of being right there in downtown, we could, as a business, own more, receive more, and not have to split this with the cities.
What? I lived there the night of a game, after a game, everything.
Live where? Tell us where you are, man.
In Cobb County.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Off Powers Ferry and all that. It's right in the mist.
What's your address, Dan? Just kidding.
Well,
And your
but-
phone.
Just kidding.
But,
But
you said you're a stone's throw away.
Yeah, it's right in the mist. And you know what? Once the game's finished and all that, you know what? You don't see nothing.
What do you mean?
The
Traffic?
traffic and everything.
No problem.
It's amazing what they did. Everybody says, "Oh, it's going to be a hornet's nest." You know what? Genial. It's geniuses.
Well, you've got to
What they
follow
did.
that example now, because if you're going to pluck down $1 billion for a franchise, you're not going to see a return on that investment for a long time. It's going to be, as Harper said, the land, the retail, the space, everything
Yeah.
else around
It's
the
business.
arena.
It's business.
Yeah.
It's business.
Do you
Yeah.
like that that Salt Lake City is going to get a club now?
Yeah, they're going to get the
Coyotes.
Coyotes. Yeah, I think that's a very, 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 very good.
It's a good fit.
Great area.
Yeah.
It's
Are
a
there
great
other
area.
Canadian towns that you'd like to go to? Is there
Well,
Saskatchewan or someplace?
no. The sad part is that the Nordiques, the people were Quebec. Quebec's got probably one of the nicest, most beautiful arena in the world right now.
In Quebec City?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's state of the
It's
art.
empty. Well,
Well,
from the NHL.
It's empty for the NHL, but their junior team draws 19,000.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, Patrick Roy is part owner of the team and all that.
Yeah.
But that's a city that should get it, but they're in the wrong parameter of another NHL team. They're 100 miles, 110 miles away from Montreal.
Right. Don't mess with that market.
Montreal just.
But Montreal isn't the same anymore. They haven't been for years.
No, and you know what? Montreal, it's always going to be
Yeah.
a bad town for hockey because, the two different languages and all that. It's very racist.
Okay.
That's a problem.
Sure. Interesting. Go ahead, Mike. You were going to.
No, just say we're getting close to the end. So I know there's some other topics we want to discuss real quick here. Since your days of playing are over, you've coached and consulted with Life College. They've had a hockey team there. I know you're real proud of. You've also worked on studies for brain injuries and so forth.
I
You
did
mentioned your
functional
own.
neurology with Dr. Carrick, where we did a whole bunch of NHL players.
You were studying their brains.
Yeah, we just study. We rehab them.
It's rehab, Mike. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not just a study.
We took guys that their career was over. One 87, his career was over, and we were able to Dr. Carrick and all that. We took him on the ice. We'd make him do the right things, and they were back playing. Their life is normal. It's like repairing alignment in a car. It's how the brain is. Once you learn all that, it's kind of amazing. You fix people with Parkinson's. You do that to me. That's the amazement,
So
the
you're
knowledge.
so
knowledge.
rehabbing players that are still young enough where they can continue to play, because I know obviously
Oh, yeah.
the NFL's been studying this, the
Well,
concussions and everything, but
well,
really
no-
with players that have
Well,
already retired.
Dr. Carrick study with Dr. Leno and with MTI, CTI, and all that, and that's a problem.
Well, you mentioned 87. I'm teasing with you right now. For those that are listening, you've worked with Sidney Crosby. You've worked with some of these players that have been hurt and get hit real hard. And the fragility, if I use that word, before they can get back out on the ice, because the biggest problem is that they hurt their head again.
Yeah, but
right? The
once
damage that can be done
the
from that.
knowledge out there is so amazing right now. Once you understand what neuroplasticity is a function of your brain being able to remember something. If I tell you I could do a weight system right now, I could do a system. I do weights and I never lose it. You've been training all your life. You ever heard of that?
Of weight training?
Yeah.
Of course I've heard of weight training.
Yeah, but weight training, you're the weight. But you ever heard of a weight training that you do and you never lose it?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Okay, I
Because
found.
you have to do it again,
Yeah,
right?
no, well, yeah,
In
but
order to keep your
I
muscles.
found that animal where you stop for 2 years and you come back 2 years ago, 2 years from now, and you lift 1900 the last time. Then I know next time in 2 years I can lift 1700.
Okay.
And within the month after, 2 months after that, I'm going to be at 1900. You never lose it.
With your
That-
brain now, you're
No,
being
no.
specific.
It's a weight system.
Okay.
Okay, that's how the brain works.
Right.
Once your neuroplasticity is there, that means all your tissues, your soft tissues, and all that, your joints, you never lose it. That's how the brain is. Once you rebuild neuroplasticity in the players, they can go back and play. They're normal. Same thing with militaries. We had people with PTSD. We fixed them, but the militaries did not want to pay for them.
Right. It's expensive.
No, it's not expensive compared to what all the pills, because the pills just kills them.
I agree with you there, but you're saying a one-time only would be rather shocking for some people. In some cases, let me finish, as opposed to a longevity of year after year after year of prescription pills. There's different ways of looking at it. I'm not disagreeing with you, Dan.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's different ways of looking at it.
Well, you see, my whole thing in life is looking at people that you look at guys at militaries and all that that's got PTSD and all that, and knowing that we fixed them without pills, and the
Right.
military, the government never wanted to look after them.
Nope.
To me, that's my biggest tragedy in my life.
Right. I hear what you're saying with that too. Yeah,
And
we
it's-
can
and-
fix you,
and
but it's not with pills. It's not with
and
drugs.
it's fixable and all that. And I've seen football players, I've seen wide receiver got fixed and all that, and their lives are back to normal. Their family, they're normal people. There's something about life. You're allowed to live your life as long as you wish.
And there's some people that heal in one way that may not be the best.
That's right.
And there's other ways that might be even better than what
Amen.
we know, than what we've been taught.
That's the whole idea.
Yeah. Mike is over here. He's looking up Terry Sawchuk.
No. Well, sort of. As we wrap things up, and Dan, I mean, this has been a pleasure for both Harper and myself. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as well, to kind of reminisce about the old days. I'm looking at the goaltenders that are in the NHL Hall of Fame. You said you had over 300 career wins. Do you feel like should you and Dan Bouchard, should Dan Bouchard be in the NHL Hall of Fame?
Who cares, really? Who cares?
300 wins is almost like, I guess, 500 home runs maybe in baseball. But
that's, you see, to me, that's not something that I really, really, really care about, because I was able to do a lot of things that looked after the right people, like the final thing, doing the guys with concussion and all that. Who would have said, well, oh, this guy's a goalie, he's going to help people get better.
Yeah. Sure, whatever. But when you do that and you do get better and the word gets out, that's the thing that's the most rewarding.
The thing is, how much did you give back? That's
Right.
the whole idea. Like when John Beliveau came to Boom Boom Jeffrey's funeral, and we sat down and we had champagne, and I said, "What's the champagne for?" Oh, he says, "For all the guys that got their check."
How about that? For him to recognize that in you.
To me, that was. I says, "What do you mean? What check?" He says, "Well, John Ferguson told me you were the guy behind it."
Yeah.
And he says, and Gordie Howe told us the same. No,
What Kurt Flood did for NHL, Major League Baseball free agency, you did for NHL for the pension plan for the hockey.
But I didn't waste my career trying to prove I was right. That was my only thing. I was able to have my career.
Yeah. Officially, you're 14 wins shy of 300.
Yeah, but I got 100. You see, I talked with the owner of the president of the league, Bettman, and I says, Can I do a deal with you, Mr. Bettman? I'm a businessman. I says, I would like to trade 100 of my ties for wins. And he looked at me and says, you got that many? What do you have that many ties for? Like,
you just need 14 more wins to get to 300.
Well, but in those days we didn't have overtime. We had ties.
How many ties do you have, Dan?
113.
113 ties.
Goodness gracious. Yeah, you just if it's
so I
50-50.
I says, just give me. We'll take 100 ties and we'll put.
Yeah, 113. God, you figure if you win half, just a third of those.
Yeah.
You're
at 320, right? You're 325.
I'm 325.
Well,
that's why in those days they used to measure. Oh well, you're looking at the amount of games I played, the amount of wins I got, the amount of points. You take the amount of points I got on the amount of games I played. I'm hitting 625. It's not bad.
Yeah. Your win percentage.
Listen, you are starting goaltender for a decade in the NHL. I mean,
no. So anyway,
it's pretty good.
You don't complain, but you see, that's where once you accomplish what you want, the Hall of Fame is not important.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying very thoroughly, and that's
that's not important. People say, "Oh, you're bitter about it."
What doesn't define you? I mean,
I don't need another ring.
Yeah. Well, here's the neat thing about it. I don't call it the Hall of Stats, and if you're just looking at numbers, a lot of guys are in or deserve to be in just because of the numbers, but for your contribution to the game and for everything else that was a part of that,
like
for John Beliveau to pat you on the back and say, we're drinking champagne because of you and what you did, and for Bobby Orr and Ferguson and all these other guys to recognize your contribution to the game, that's what the Hall of Fame to me means. And so we need to get a hold of some folks in Toronto, make sure that they put you on the ballot again.
No, that's not important. To me,
well, but it is to us.
Not to you, it is to others.
No, that's not important. But the whole idea is that, you see, the right people, the guys that did all this stuff that never, the guys that were getting screwed by the owners. Well, I don't mind saying that the owners were not, truthful to the players, to the game. They were only truthful to their pockets, to their business, the businessman.
And you found out about that, right?
And,
so something got leaked to you, and you did the right thing with it.
I know, but the whole idea,
it had to be exposed.
The whole idea to be part of the people says, "Oh, you're going to be voted in the Hall of Fame." You know what? One guy asked me one time in Toronto 3 weeks ago when I was there. We were signing autograph. I was with all the boys, and he says, "What happened if you would get a chance to go in the Hall of Fame again?" I said, "I declined it. It's not important to me."
But Dan, there's nothing wrong with tooting your own horn.
I know. No,
why don't you?
The whole idea is the only thing that really counts in my life is when I die, I go in the Hall of Halls. That's
okay. Well, sure.
That's the only one.
Have you thought about writing a book or doing something like that?
I've been asked 10, 12 times.
And why haven't you?
Yeah, what's wrong with
Why
you,
write a
Dan?
book?
Why not?
No, it's not important.
Was it not fun talking?
You know what?
Was this
I
not
think
fun?
people that write a book is because they need money or they want to have something more than, and it's. I think
Not always.
it's pretentious.
But
I
it's-
read Mikey
No, I-
Rosion's book. Mike wrote a book 40 years after the Olympics. And I had just as much fun reading it. Now, granted,
Yeah, I
his
don't-
recollection and his ability to share things, I would have loved to have read it in 1981, but getting the chance to look at it again
Yeah.
in 2021 or
no,
22 when it was
I think
released.
to write a book is pretentious. you
well,
know?
it's part of your legacy, though.
Oh,
When you're not
who
here,
cares? A legacy. You know what? You turn on the computer. You go to Wikipedia and all that. You have it all there. Who
but the
cares?
story you share today is not there, and that's a fascinating
Yeah.
story.
Dan, seriously.
Yeah, but you know what? The people that knows it, like I sat down about 5-6 years ago with Mr. Cousin, and we had this
Mr.
discussion.
He's still around. Is he still around?
Yeah, he lives in Jupiter.
Okay,
and he
Florida?
has a house in
The planet. Of course, Florida.
Well, you just said Jupiter. It could be another part of the world that has a Jupiter. in it.
football player.
Yeah.
You know, no,
I'm one step below a goalie, aren't I, Dan? And turn to my.
I'm just, but
Well
no,
said,
he
Dan.
He has a house in what you call it, across from the Marta station. There was a nice golf course there.
Well, I'm
inside
not
the
going to
pro-
say because
next
you
to
made fun of my Florida.
Next to Ogle, he's not far from the Peachtree Country Club. So he's got a house here, but he's got a house
Brookwood
also
Station near in
in,
Marta.
in
Yeah.
Brookwood.
So here's part of why you have to write the book, because if you don't write it, nobody else is going to have the same facts, the same amount of information, and I'm sure the young players today, the Conor McGregors, don't know anything about it. What happened? That you helped a cornerstone, a footprint that is pivotal to the financial future of the league and the players. You're a part of that.
Well,
So to
the
write
only-
the book,
the-
and Mike and
the-
I are looking
the-
forward to reading it.
no,
End
no,
of story,
but
Dan. Come on.
The thing is, look, you know what? I tested the free agency. I tested the ownership, and look,
And you're all the better.
I got the result I want. Who cares about it?
Yeah, you had a great career.
Quit being so Canadian
For-
and write the book.
No. It's
So
you
many
know what?
people write
It's
books.
It's been offered to me many.
You would enjoy
it's
the
been on- no,
experience.
no.
Everyone I know that
Oh,
said they
I-
didn't want to do it because of the same reasons you're giving, they eventually write the book and say it was a wonderful experience to relive a lot of it, to talk to some old people, to put it together. I think you'll really enjoy it.
You know what? There's a guy that called me about 2 years ago. He did something at a TV show. He asked me about. He got the inside news on because the thing when the players the owners, and how come the Flames became the Calgary Flames and all that. The same story we talk about. And he says, "Why don't you write a book?" I says, "You know what? There's too much going on in my life in writing a book."
Yeah, okay. Hey, real quick, best uniform you ever played in?
The best uniform I ever played in, the nicest uniform I ever played in, was when I played junior. We were called the Sorel Blackhawks. We had the original Chicago Blackhawks shirts.
You like the Chicago shirt?
Jersey,
Yeah,
the
their
jersey.
sweaters were cool.
They were-
I thought your road Atlanta jerseys, by far, those better than
those-
Winnipeg. And
the red Atlanta jerseys were really, really nice.
yeah, with the big A on it. Favorite stick?
Oh, I always played with Louisville.
Did you really?
Yeah, I was a first color stick. I was a first color pads.
If you didn't have Louisville, who would you go with? And this is in a day and age right now. There's only 2 or 3 brands.
In those days, we had CCM and Bauer.
Well, there's Northland, Coho.
There was Northland,
Victoriaville's?
There was Northland Goldie Stick, but when they came out, with
Sherwood?
the new-
You had Sherwood
I
sticks.
played Sherwood in America when I was in the American League. Yeah, I did use the Sherwood stick.
Best goaltender of all time, Dan.
The best goalie, Pelle Lindbergh.
Pelle Lindbergh, really?
Yeah,
Old Flyers.
yeah. Pelle Lindbergh.
Why Pelle Lindbergh? I wasn't expecting that.
Me either.
He was a perfect goalie. He was Jacques Plante had taken him in, and he had showed him what Eddie Shore says with goalie, you wait and you respond. Eddie Shore used to say, you don't go down on your knees before the shot. You wait and you respond. And Pelly Lindbergh was that perfect little.
And his career was tragically cut short when he died in a car accident.
He killed himself in the Porsche. Yeah, but
Yeah.
the whole idea, Pelly Lindbergh, where he was when he was probably the.
He was
best
always in the
goalie.
right place at the right time, pretty much, right?
Best goaltender today. Still playing.
I like Bob.
Really?
Bob, the one playing for the Florida Panthers. Bobrinski, whatever. The Russian.
Bobrovsky.
Bobby is what
best
Bobrovsky.
Top NHL players of all time. Your top 3 or 4.
The top 3 players of all time in the NHL, you're going to have Bobby Orr. You're going to have Gordie Howe. And you're going to have a guy like Joe Sakic.
Ahead of a Wayne Gretzky.
Well, Wayne Gretzky, you cannot leave him out.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky.
He's already
but
on
Wayne
the team.
Gretzky, his power was Paul Coffey.
He had a great team around him.
Yeah, but a guy like Paul Coffey and Messier was.
I would have thought it was Jari Kurri on the line because he just gets the puck to Jari and he closes out 500 goals later.
Jari, but you see, I never was afraid to play against the Edmonton team
because they didn't play great defense. They'd
First
give
of
up
all,
6 or 7 goals.
He didn't
They'd
play.
score 9.
I knew if I keep him to 2 goals, I was a sure win.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because and when we played, every time we played Edmonton, we go to Edmonton, everybody took Gretzky's wingers away.
Okay.
And it's me against Gretzky and the defense.
Yeah.
We're always a goalie and the defense against Gretzky.
Would you have liked to have Larry Robinson or Bobby Orr with?
You got a guy like Larry Robinson. Larry Robinson's a very special player. You take a guy like Dennis Potvin. A guy like Dennis Potvin with this look. The guy got 100 points in the NHL.
Yeah.
You know, they were great. They were great players, but they didn't have the charisma of Bobby Orr. You see,
or the speed. Bobby could go from one end of the ice to the other as good as anybody.
I was there when Bobby Orr was the best, and when they won the Stanley Cup in Boston, and then I played in the era where some of the teams like like Flyers and all that. Flyers are a good team.
Yeah.
But the Flyers lost their pizzazz. It's when they played the Montreal Canadiens, they lost in 4 straight.
Right.
Why is that?
They couldn't beat them up.
No,
they had to play beat up hockey.
That's not. No. That's not what happened. They had no more guts because the Montreal Forum and they threatened the blood test or urine test the Flyers for drugs.
Oops. They couldn't pass the test?
They wouldn't have passed the test.
Right.
They wouldn't have passed the test. And that's how Montreal, that's how the Flyers died.
Hey, Mike's a big, we spent a whole segment talking about Al Arbor. Billy Smith.
Best coach in hockey.
Al Arbor.
Yeah, best coach in hockey.
Kelly Rudy.
Interesting coming from a guy from Quebec, too.
On the air talking about how special Al Arbor was and this is after they had won the 4 cups. Billy had retired, just how special a human being he was.
Yeah, he was here with Atlanta when he started.
Al Arbor was?
Yeah.
Player.
No, I didn't know that. He was assistant coach.
Oh, I thought he was
he was one of our coaches, assistant coach, and he was the next guy to replace Boom Boom, but Bill Torrey got him. But let me tell you,
can you imagine if Al Arbor became the head coach of the Atlanta Flames?
Wow.
Well, we would have won the Stanley Cup.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because Cliff Fletcher had promised us that if we get, what's his name, the guy that came the last year we were here in Atlanta with the Atlanta Flames. You remember that?
The last head coach for the Flames?
Yeah, the last head coach for the Flames. Now, I got you.
You want me to look it up?
I got you in trouble there, huh?
I don't know everything, Dan.
Well, that's in 80, and that's when the Islanders ran the 4. They got the 4 in a row.
Yeah, but no, Arbor was probably one of the best
What did he
keep
do
him.
differently, Dan? What was special about Al
He
Arbor?
played the game and then never forgot what it was for to be a player,
Yeah.
and he understood the family around the game, and he understand the togetherness of a team.
Okay. Just able to put that all in
He
one
was
piece.
able to put everything together. And Al Arbor,
Al McNeil
Al McNeil,
was the last head coach.
there's Tom Cousin tells me one day at the Petrie Country Club, he says, Mr. Fletcher told me that this guy that's going to come as a coach, we're going to win the Stanley Cup. And I says, yeah. And the first time I met Al McNeil, well, his wife had been in my house that afternoon with his two kids.
Hey, now keep it clean here.
No,
What's
no,
his wife doing in your
no,
house,
no,
Dan?
no,
All right.
no. Allison, Alistair, and Mrs. McNeil.
Okay.
They were at my house swimming that afternoon. They had just got in town with 3 days, and they were looking around. And my wife says, "We're going to show you around." And they stop at the house.
How about that, Mike?
They
Everyone comes to the Bouchard house.
So
if you're coming to
look,
Atlanta,
look,
you got to
look,
go. You got to pass
but-
Dan's test.
But I go. So Cliff calls me and he says, "Did you
swimming.
go and meet Hal?" I says, "No, I'm going to stop by. I'm going to drop his family over there." So I go. I drop his family. I just drop his family. So his wife says, "Wait, I'm going to go and get Hal." Hal comes to the door. I says, "Hey, how you doing?" Dan Bouchard. He goes, "What?" I says, "Dan Bouchard, the goalie for the Flames." Dan Bouchard. Oh yeah.
Uh-oh.
That was the first impression sometimes. And then he
no
says,
idea who you
I says, "Nice to meet you. Cliff asked me to stop by and say hi to you." Huh? Oh, okay. So I said, "Nice family you got there." "Oh yeah." So this is his son there. I says, "That's Alistair, like your same name as you, Alistair." He goes, "Oh, you know him?" Yeah, I says, "Yeah." Then he turns around and this is Allison, the daughter. I says, "This is my daughter." "Yeah," I says, "Allison." He looks at me. He says, "Oh, you know her too, huh?"
We'll just leave out of the book.
So you think we were going to win the Stanley Cup? You think why by the end of the year, when you're playing a game in New York and you skate on the delay penalty and you look at the bench and there's no head on the bench, no players, you think you're going to win the Stanley Cup?
No, you're not even going to make the playoffs.
Because the players, the players are laughing so loud because that coach is calling the next guy on the ice is Bubba Beck. He's playing for the Rangers.
Wrong guy.
You think you're
Yeah.
going to win the
Yeah.
cup?
Ugh, goodness, Barry Beck.
Dan, this has been the longest show, Harper, we've ever had.
Yeah, how about that?
So we set a record. We could go on for hours, Dan. We're gonna.
No, there's all kinds of anecdotes in the game, and
Oh yeah,
I had a great life. I played with Canada in Canada Cup. I was with the Stanley Cup. The Canadian team was 50 goal scorers.
you've played with and against some of the greatest of all time.
Oh, I had a good time.
When's the last time you've had any contact? My idol is Bobby Orr. When's the last time you've had any contact with him of any sort?
I haven't seen Bobby. I saw him 4 or 5 years ago in Boston.
Do you have like his phone number?
No.
Not that I'm asking you to give it to me.
Yeah,
That'd be kind of cool.
No, I had the guy that's asked me because I have an auto. I'll give you a picture of me and Bobby Orr.
Okay.
Because we were in training camp together, and I got pictures of him and I taken together.
I've got framed a photo in my office at home.
do you really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got
he's a
it
guy.
from an auction.
And I'll give you one, and I'll sign it. Then there's a guy in Florida that gets them signed by Bobby.
Will you at least think about writing a book? At least think about it.
No, that's complete.
He just did. He just did, and that's all he
It's
thought.
off the table already.
It's completely off. It's just like no.
How about we get a ghostwriter? You just talk to somebody else, and they'll write
even
it.
a ghostwriter. And my brother-in-law asked me. He knew some people in Toronto and some people in London, Ontario. A guy that's a good, very, very good writer, and I'm not interested. To me, that's
we tried, Harper.
no. People told me, "Oh, there's money in it." You know what?
But you're not. Again, we're not doing it for the money or anything else. It's not look at me. It's just it's
History of the
history.
game.
It's the history of the
Dan.
game.
Come on.
People
No,
like
no.
me love
Speaking
the
of
history.
history, Jesus saves, but Esposito knocks in the rebound. Is that one of the best quotes from hockey players, amongst hockey players, or are there some other goofy ones that are even better than that?
No, the best one was Bernie. You know, only Jesus saved more than Bernie. That's the best one.
And on that, Harper, Dan,
There
thank
you
you
are.
so much. Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming by today.
I love that. Hey, I think we talked plenty about business too. So there you are.
And, did we?
Well, we'll still work on the book. After we're done, we'll try even more, and we'll have an update here pretty soon with Dan's recollection
All
of
right.
how the league went and Life College, your contribution to not only the NHL but to other people in their lives and turning them around from not enjoying their health to where they can get back on the ice
Yep.
and play.
And win the Stanley Cup.
How about
That's,
that?
To me,
All
that,
right.
that was the biggest one. We had Taze. We have, a guy called Sid the Kid, and all that.
We're gonna just keep talking forever.
Fantastic work. But thank you, Dan, so
Love
much for
it.
being
Former
with us.
Love it. It's been a great life.
Former NHL goaltender with the Atlanta Flames for all those years, Dan Bouchard. For Harper LaBelle, Mike Salmon. Harper, any parting thoughts?
Let's continue hockey talk. We'll have to do it again.
And me growing in the kingdom. That's all I want. Just
There you
keep
go.
growing in the
There you
kingdom.
go. All right. Thanks for joining us to our listeners, and we'll see you next time here on Gwinnett Business Radio.